G'day YouTube, Joby from Oz here. I just wanted to take this opportunity this morning to try to get a conversation started with people who are much more intelligent than myself, possibly much better resourced than myself, and with proven track records of being able to get projects like the one I am talking about off the ground and delivered in fairly short spaces of time. In the news recently in South Australia, Mike Cannon-Brookes and Elon Musk managed to get 100 days or essentially the Hornsby Power Reserve off the ground very quickly, delivered to South Australia, and in a market where only 30% of the capacity of that battery is able to be used for frequency control and ancillary services, it is already profitable, which in the national energy market, the eastern states energy market, means that South Australia has been able to be a net exporter of energy, and that, and also the sister project, its new battery, another 30 megawatts, is equally able to be profitable very quickly. In Western Australia, we have a fairly unique solution in that we are disconnected from the main grid. We have our own centralised and state-owned power supply. So that's one of the things in our favour at the moment. Second is that we have a fairly good uptake of rooftop solar, to the point where the grid is starting to suffer because of this, and there is no good response, as far as I can see, that is being planned to mitigate the rise of rooftop solar. Now, we've got rooftop solar here. I've put 6.5 kilowatts of panels on my roof, and one of the great things that people don't tell you about is that every 6.5 kilowatts an hour of energy that's coming off those panels is 6.5 kilowatts of heat that's not going into our house per hour. Not to mention that it's not 100% conversion rate, so the heat that's otherwise landing isn't 6.5 kilowatts. That's just the usable energy we're getting off that otherwise wasted entropy. There's other conversations that I've had going on with people such as Lithium Australia. Adrian from Lithium Australia has been working very hard in local Western Australian environments to develop lithium processing, lithium recycling, and lithium battery cathode powders for storage batteries here in Western Australia. They've been able to get a very highly efficient recycling process and a pilot project off the ground, to the point where I think he's got a really good vertically integrated solution around, firstly, recycling old lithium cells, secondly, producing lithium cathode powers for storage batteries, and thirdly, for sourcing lithium from mine tailings and other sources of lithium around various mine sites and so forth. They've got a number of new sources, but also these existing sources in tailings from existing dams that can be used, and they're getting 98% or something stupidly high recovery rates of lithiums from these sources. So there's potential in Western Australia for a good source of local lithium, and if there was sufficient interest and support, growing West Australian businesses along the same time. We've also got a situation where schools funding is taking a massive hit. The Gonski reforms were trying to get targeted as needs fundings for schools, and whilst private schools are doing still very well, I know that the funding model for schools is still a challenge for any of the governments that try to deal with this issue. Where is the money going to come from? And I raise that as part of this conversation because every community has, local community has fairly close by some sort of government-owned school or local funding centre or a local resource location that could potentially be used for this proposal. We've also got regional communities that are also struggling to survive and fund themselves, so I raised those in this conversation as a another site, a location of where to position my proposed solution. I grew up with the internet where I had a 300 baud modem, and so if I wanted to download an image, I would have to initiate a download, wait some time, and have a JPEG come through a few minutes later. JPEGs is a single still image, and what that meant is that in order to meet the needs of viewing a single image, I had to know ahead of time that I needed that image to be downloaded so that I could then view it on demand. I see that the power supply is very similar to these networks in that what we're trying to deliver is electrons, content, to a diverse array of consumers. Each consumer has a variable demand, and one of the ways that we manage that demand is by having appropriate buffers in place. And as technology has moved along, our network speeds have increased for data. We've been able to deal with a diverse requirement for a whole range of different content by having larger transmission lines, bigger capacities to deliver on-demand energy or on-demand network capacity. I see our electricity grid has a similar network construction. There's a supply of electrons and there's a consumer of electrons. There's multiple new suppliers of electrons, being rooftop solar, that have come into play, and the juggle is that those are not controllable from a single central location, so the supply side of that market is not terribly well regulated. What I see that we need is local buffering of that capacity at a scale where our state-owned utility can actually manage it reasonably well and be able to control where and when the electricity is flowing in a much larger scale than we currently see. I know that there's a number of energy companies who are working on virtual power plants where individual consumers have batteries located at their houses, control on the metering so that they can either demand that those batteries draw energy from the grid or push energy back to the grid as required, and individual consumers are being included in some sort of an arrangement with the power companies there. And it's like a public-private cooperative arrangement. What I'm proposing is that Mike Cannon-Brookes, obviously with JIRA and Agile methodologies, we can take advantage of a deliverable, a short-term deliverable, and I say short-term because I figure if we target this as an election cycle-sized piece of work, then the politicians become interested, something they can deliver in their term. We need something we can deliver quickly that has a meaningful capacity to resolve an issue. The issue I see that we need to resolve is Western Australia's transition to renewable energies in a cost-effective manner and a time-effective manner. We also have other areas of funding need that are fighting for funds, and those being the schools and regional community support. And I know people like Alana McTiernan and Mark McGowan, the Premier, have many competing needs for funding that mean that a lot of projects have to compete with other projects for this kind of attention. We know from Hornsby Reserve that a 100 megawatt battery is able to be delivered fairly quickly. We know that that's based on modular designs. Elon Musk, using 18650 cells, has been able to create power walls, vehicles, all sorts of stuff based on 18650 chemistry, because it is a consumer commodity product. The commoditisation of these products means that they can be produced cheaply and quickly. So what I'm proposing is that a pilot program be set up to create a smaller distributed battery system, still owned by the state power utility, sublet to the state government schools or state government regional centres that provide a location for these resources, and with management and control systems that are totally controlled by the Western Australian Power Utility. We know that the feed-in tariff that we get here is 7 cents a kilowatt hour. Under demand, that's sold back at 47 something kilowatts to consumers. So there is a 5-6 times markup on the power cost to the power delivery. There is existing infrastructure there that transmits that energy, and the more power that's being generated locally provides a capacity issue with transmission lines, because there's maybe more power coming from a certain substation area, more than the grid can handle. So we need to buffer. So the proposal is we build buffering batteries, we put them in schools, we put them in regional local government centres, we provide councils with the same model or sublet to councils, so that we have a capacity to deliver, say, a 10 megawatt or a 1 megawatt battery unit with a remote control connection to our power controllers, so that they have the ability to turn on demand or turn on supply at a moment's notice, and controllably ramp up to deal with windy days, hot days, cloudy days. By doing this under management with a single utility at a larger scale than the household battery, we get to deliver a solution that is more meaningfully able to buffer the power needs and the power generation of rooftop solar, potentially providing a funding source for the installed location. If after a year the battery was paid for, this could be something that could then supply ongoing funding for a school. A 1 megawatt battery providing extra income to support most at-need schools or most at-need communities would hopefully be a self-funding means of deploying both grid stability and also regional security or school security. This would lead hopefully to better education outcomes and better community outcomes. Getting communities on board, putting solar on houses means that the houses themselves are cooler because of the thermodynamics of taking that energy off the roof. If we can use local companies for our batteries, such as Lithium Australia's storage battery solutions, we're helping to develop a local community or a local business. Essentially, that's the challenge. Guys, you're the smart ones in the room. Mike Cannon-Brookes, Elon Musk, Adrian Griffith from Lithium Australia, Mark McGowan, Alana McTiernan. You guys know the demand and the supplies of funding. This is a talking point to get you guys together in the same room to figure out what can you do in the next 3 months. Can you deliver a 1 megawatt battery to one school that can be controlled by Western Power or Synergy? Can you do it repeatably? Can you say, okay, that's a commodity product that you can now deliver to another school, another school, another school? If you can do that within your elected term, providing a positive funding model and an immediate buffering of the rooftop solar problem, you've not only done a revenue positive thing in areas of need, you've also substantially moved Western Australia towards our 100% renewable energy targets. If you do it in a short term within your election cycle deliverable, you've got something you can go to the next election with. That is solving the power crisis for Western Australians, solving the education crisis, and solving the regional community crisis. Please, guys, talk about it. Get it done.